It is the Pittsburgh Hockey Now rapid offseason recap and analysis. Hi, I'm Dan Kingerski. If I begin to sound like Billy Joel doing We Didn't Start the Fire, purely unintentional. Let's get to the offseason subtractions, which began just minutes after Game 82 last season when Big Jeff Carter announced his retirement. He said it was time, and he had known that for a couple of months. Didn't tell many teammates. I think Sidney Crosby and a couple others knew, and that was it. You saw the referees and even the New York Islanders kind of paying their respects to Carter in the final minutes of that game. But Carter has retired. The other two subtractions, primarily speaking, were P.O. Joseph, which was surprising because President of Hockey Operations / GM Kyle Dubas publicly said he expected to offer Joseph a contract to retain his rights and then work something out. They didn't do that. Joseph becomes a free agent and signs in St. Louis. In July, the Penguins traded Riley Smith to the New York Rangers for a future second-round pick and a conditional fifth. So no more Riley Smith with the Penguins. They also let Jansen Harkins walk via free agency, but I don't think any of you are going to be too upset about that. The Penguins also fired associate head coach Todd Reirden. They replaced him a few weeks later with Mike Sullivan friend and former San Jose Sharks head coach David Quinn. You may realize that Quinn in his last two head coaching stops had a pair of Norris Trophy winners. In New York, he helped Adam Fox win the Norris, and in San Jose, he helped some guy named Erik Karlsson win the Norris Trophy. Karlsson, of course, now with the Penguins. On the intake, the Penguins had a few free agent signings of note on July 1st, beginning with left-handed defenseman Matt Grzelcyk. Grzelcyk will replace Joseph somewhere on the Penguins' blue line. The Penguins also gave a one-year, $1.2 million deal to Anthony Beauvillier. Beauvillier played with three teams last season, beginning in Vancouver, traded to Chicago, traded to Nashville. He said it certainly took a toll on his mental health, but he is geared up for 24-25. He fits somewhere in the Penguins' bottom six. The other addition to the Penguins lineup, Blake Lizotte. The LA Kings chose not to tender Lizotte a contract over $2 million to keep his rights, so the Penguins snapped him up on a 2-year deal at $1.8 million per. Those are your primary additions, at least via free agency. The Penguins' trades were unique because this time the Penguins were on the receiving end of a couple of salary dumps. The Penguins got Kevin Hayes from the St. Louis Blues, but that was not the primary focus of the trade. No, St. Louis kicked in a second-rounder so the Penguins would accept Hayes and his $3.5 million salary. However, St. Louis wasn't quite done with that trade because a few weeks later, they needed that second-round pick back to go start some RFA drama with the Edmonton Oilers. So Dubas profited from their need, giving St. Louis their 2025 second-round pick back in exchange for their 2026 second-round pick and the Ottawa Senators' 2025 third-round pick. The Penguins tossed in a fifth-rounder to kind of grease the skids to get that done. Hayes figures to be the Penguins' third-line center. Pittsburgh Hockey Now asked Dubas after the trade if Kevin Hayes were a center or a winger. Dubas was pretty quick to say he envisioned Hayes as a center, which certainly cast Lars Eller's future in doubt, but put a pin in that. The other Penguins trade this summer was also a salary dump. In reverse, I suppose. The Penguins accepting Cody Glass from the Nashville Predators. Nashville gives a third-round pick to the Penguins to take on Glass and his $2.5 million salary. So there you go. Those are the trades the Penguins made. The Penguins had a fairly decent draft class. The top two picks, 44th and 46th overall, Harrison Brunicky, a flawless skating defenseman, and Tanner Howe, a chippy little Brad Marchand wannabe. 44th and 46th, they both signed their entry-level contracts, as did Braden Yeager. He signed his entry-level contract. He'll come to training camp in September looking to make an NHL debut this season. That's the recap. Now, if we take a look at the Penguins' lines and begin our Penguins analysis, now things get a little bit sketchy because the top six is the exact same as it ended last season. It's hard to say the Penguins will be better when the core of the team is still the same. You still have O'Connor, Crosby, and Rust on the top line. Michael Bunting acquired in the Jake Gensel trade on the left wing. Evgeny Malkin in the middle. Ricard Raquel on the right. Here's where the third line. Here's where it gets more than a little bit sketchy, because the Penguins' third line will neither strike fear into the hearts of opponents offensively, and they might be a little bit defensively sketchy. Anthony Beauvillier projects that third line left wing with Hayes in the middle and Valtteri Puustinen on the right. However, there are a glut of players who could fill any of those spots. The fourth line could be really fun. It could be just a whirlwind of chaos and physicality with Blake Lizotte on the left wing, Lars Eller in the middle. Eller is usually good for 15 to 16 goals per season. He's been consistent there. On the right wing, the Penguins expect to move Noel Acciari over there. Acciari was a very conservative center for the Penguins last season. If you know Acciari and his career history as a winger, he will get after it. He will be a gnat to defensemen. He will make their lives miserable. He does so with speed and physicality, legal and otherwise. So the Penguins' fourth line really might help them preserve a few more leads. But where's the offense going to come from? Lizotte and Acciari are both single-digit goal scorers. Can Eller provide enough offense for that fourth line? Will Eller and Acciari even be on the team? Taking the Penguins' offseason analysis a step further, besides Kyle Dubas's stated intention to acquire draft picks as urgently as possible, which he has done, he also said he wanted the team to get younger. He wanted to include some of his young players in the NHL lineup. Well, as it stands now, the Penguins have far too many veterans on NHL contracts at the NHL level. There isn't space for a Vasily Ponomarev, or even if Braden Yeager comes to camp. Now, we did scout Yeager at the Memorial Cup, and we had a few concerns about flaws in his game. But if he comes to camp and really pushes for an NHL spot, where would he go? Will the Penguins be willing to waive, say, a Kevin Hayes, or even pull the trigger finally on a Lars Eller trade? It would seem to be that Eller has become expendable as a $2.45 million fourth-line center. Kind of the same thing with Acciari as well, where a team on the cusp who needs just a bit more grit might benefit far more from Acciari than would the Penguins, who figure to stash him on the fourth line. So look for Acciari and Eller to be the Penguins' trade chips this coming season. Otherwise, the young players will be stuck in the American Hockey League. And there was one transaction that I think I foolishly forgot to mention. That was bringing 2022 fourth-round pick Sergey Murof to North America. Murof was between teams in Russia, KHL, and their top junior league. He signs with the Penguins, and believe me when I tell you, the organization is drooling. He was fantastic in the Penguins development camp in early July. He was brilliant in 6 games with the KHL team he played for last season, even better with his Russian junior team. He signed his entry-level deal. He told a Russian reporter he expects to play most of the season, if not the entire season, next year in the AHL. So those are all of the recaps and analysis. It is tough to say the Penguins are going to be a better team than last season. They're certainly not better on paper. When you replace Riley Smith, who generally considered to be a 20-goal guy, with Anthony Beauvillier, that's a step down. When you put Lars Eller at fourth-line center and put Kevin Hayes in the third spot, that also, to me, is a bit of a step down. So where will the Penguins improve? They're clearly making a play both to kind of hold the line on giving up assets. They're not going to acquire players to make them better via trade. They're acquiring draft picks instead. Their chance to get better really is with attitude and consistency. Hold some leads. Play harder night in and night out. Last season, every turning point win was followed by 2 turning point losses and malaise and misery, and it really wasn't a lot of fun to be around. I promise you that. So if they can bring their lunch pails, if that fourth line can bring some what Mike Sullivan calls stick-to-itiveness and some energy and be a spark plug for the team, perhaps they can make a few other players around them better on some nights when the team doesn't have their best. That's the Penguins' biggest chance. Goaltending will be the same. Tristan Jarry and Alex Nedeljkovic. Nedeljkovic signing a 2-year, $5 million deal in June. In fact, it was so mundane, I almost forgot to mention it. Well, there, you retroactively put that into the recap. The question will be in the Penguins' goaltending if Alex Nedeljkovic is a backup or if he elevates himself to an equal part of the tandem. Remember, he started the final 15 games last season, 14 of which were playoff crucial. He played in 16 straight because he relieved Tristan Jarry in the game in Denver. So there you go. After a couple of false wraps, now I can say that is the Pittsburgh Hockey Now rapid offseason recap and analysis. I'm Dan Kingerski. Like, subscribe, follow, and check out the website too.